Well, it's hard to believe that this is the last sermon in our sermon series called In the Trenches. I mean, it's just hard for me to believe. Maybe, I don't know if it's hard for you to believe or not. But anyway, we've been going through the New Testament book called 1 Peter. And if you haven't been here, in the last several weeks, why do we call it In the Trenches? It's because these believers, it's as if they're driving down the road and their car's gone off the road and their wheels are spinning. They're down in a trench. They're down, in a ditch and they can't get out. And spiritually speaking, that describes them because it's really tough to be a Christian in their culture. Their, family doesn't understand this obsession with this Jesus guy. People are teasing them. People are persecuting them. The Roman government is actually actively persecuting Christians, even killing some Christians. And so, again, spiritually speaking, they are in the trenches. They throw up their hands. Peter, how do we live the Christian life? Because this is such a hostile environment. And then Peter writes what we know is 1 Peter. He writes this letter. And if you've been with us, he has told us repeatedly, I know that you guys are going through a difficult time, but you still have to be faithful. You still have to live the Christian life. And he's told us how to be faithful in all these areas of life. And then today, again, it's the end of the letter. And I tell you what, Butch's comment about where's Chris going with today's sermon? Well, I thought that too. The first day I was studying, I thought, what have I done here? Because there's like 3 different topics here, at least from my perspective. He's going to start off talking, he's giving instructions to elders. Okay, then he goes from there, and he's going to talk about this all-important attitude that everybody needs to have, this attitude of humility. And then the third topic, as I see it, he's going to start talking about the devil, Satan. And so at first, I remember I just thought, why did I decide to do this? This is like 3 different sermons. Was I nuts? But you know what? God showed me, I believe, an underlying theme that we can see throughout all 3 of those sort of 3 topics there, okay? And the underlying theme is this, is how important God is to us in everyday life. We need God's help. God is able to help. He wants to help. But here's the catch. We have to ask Him, and we have to ask Him from a position of humility. In other words, we have to admit, God, I need help, okay? I can't do this on my own. I don't want to do this on my own. And God is more than able to help. He wants to help, but we have to ask. So that's the underlying theme, I think, in all 3 areas today. And as I was thinking about that sort of underlying theme that hopefully you'll see as well as I did, who would most appreciate today's sermon? And it seems to me that there's probably 2 groups of people who I think might get a whole lot out of today's message. The first group, and you can decide whether you're in either one of these groups. I'm not sure if you're in both groups. I don't know. I hadn't thought about that. But the first group is you do things in your own power. You think, you plan, you behave, and you don't always even talk to God about it. You don't consult Him. You don't ask Him for advice. You don't tell Him what the deal is. And so you're trying to do things in your own power. Now, if that describes you, even if you do it just occasionally, well, this is going to be a really good sermon for you. On the other hand, maybe you're over here in this other group, and maybe, and I just have to believe that there are at least a handful of you out here today. I just sense that you feel like you've been abandoned by God. You feel like He doesn't care about you anymore, that you're just an afterthought. And as we're going to see today, with all due respect, I think you're wrong. Because God loves you and God cares for you. God is able to help. He wants to help you. But remember, we have to be humble enough to ask for that help, okay? And once we do ask for that help, we have to believe that He's actually helping us behind the scenes, even though we can't see it. And as I was thinking about those 2 groups, I was thinking, I personally probably identify with the first group. That is, I occasionally, I'm ashamed to admit this, but I try and do things in my own power. And in fact, even religious things, ministry-related things. I can't tell you, it disappoints me so much. Now, I'm ashamed to admit this, but, I'll be doing something like here, at church, doing church work. I'm not sleeping, Butch, okay? So I'm here, I'm working, and all of a sudden it'll occur to me, you idiot, you didn't even pray about this. What are you doing? And so I just stop what I'm doing, and I confess that, because in my mind, anyway, it's a sin. It really is. Lord, I'm sorry. I haven't even asked you about this. Lord, will you please help me? Let me back up and start at A, okay? I'm almost to Z, but I'm going back to A. Please help me to do this. And you know why I do that? Because I know that, I could, for instance, prepare a sermon, and it might be pretty good. It might be even very good. But with God's help, it could be off the charts good. So I want to make sure I get his input. But on the other hand, maybe you're here, and again, you feel like, God has abandoned you. Your life stinks. There's this problem, there's this problem, there's this problem, and this problem. And, you just feel like, God has forgotten about me. He must not love me because nothing is going right. And can I tell you, again, you're going to find this sermon very, very helpful today because God is able to help. He's willing to help. And my hunch is, if you feel like you've been abandoned by God, my hunch is you have asked God repeatedly for help, but you don't believe that he is. But I would say that he is helping you. You may not see it, you may not notice it, but he is. You need to believe it. So God is able to help, he's willing to help, but we have to have the humility to ask for his help. And once we do, we have to believe that he is, in fact, doing what he promised to do, okay? So that's where we're going. So let's just open our Bibles to 1 Peter chapter 5 is where we are. Last chapter of 1 Peter. And remember, there are 3 topics here today, and it's going to seem disjointed to you. I'm just going to alert you that, he's going to give instructions to elders. Then he's going to talk about humility. Then he's going to talk about how to handle the devil, okay? And again, at first glance, oh my gosh, there's 3 different topics, 3 sermons, but there is this underlying theme. And so what I want you to try and do, if you can, I don't know if I could do it either, but this theme, we need God's help. God is able to help. He wants to help, but we have to ask him in humility for that help, okay? Keep that theme sort of in the back of your mind and as we go through all 3 chunks of Scripture here. So here we go, instructions to elders. Beginning in verse 1, he says, "To the elders among you, I appeal as a fellow elder, a witness of Christ's sufferings, and one who also will share in the glory to be revealed. Be shepherds of God's flock that is under your care, serving as overseers, not because you must, but because you are willing, as God wants you to be. Not greedy for money, but eager to serve, not lording it over those entrusted you, but being examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, he will receive the crown of glory that will never fade away." Now, verse 2, this really all-important statement, he says, "Be shepherds of God's flock that is under you, serving as overseers. Be shepherds of God's flock that is under your care." And so this is a reminder to elders. And of course, I think most of us know that elders, biblically, scripturally, according to the New Testament, are the shepherds, if you will, of local churches. But elders are the same as shepherds, just the same as overseers. They're all the same name for the same office, the same church office. And Peter reminds them, hey guys, as an elder, you have a responsibility. You are to be a shepherd of a flock. Now most of us think about a shepherd, having sheep, a first century shepherd, and he or she would be responsible for a whole bunch of sheep, okay, a flock. Well, in this metaphor, elders, in a similar way, they're shepherds, but their sheep aren't sheep, right? They're all of you. They're people. They are Christians in this local church, okay? And as an elder, they are responsible for your care. Just as a shepherd makes sure that the sheep have food to eat, clean water to drink, and nurse them back to health, they are responsible, metaphorically, just in a similar way for all of you. You all are the flock. And in this metaphor, the elders are the shepherds. They are the overseers, okay? And then he says some really very convicting things, at least if you've ever been an elder, they're really convicting. He says, serve willingly. So don't serve because you have to. Don't serve because there just isn't anybody else to serve. You need to serve, not because you have to, but willingly, okay? And then he goes on to say, and also, I want you to be eager to serve, okay? I know that you could probably do a better job, you have a full-time job and you need to do that, but, or you could even have a second job. You could earn money on the side, but no, I want you to be eager to serve here, And then, if that isn't challenging enough, then he says, don't lord it over the people. Meaning, don't be a tyrant. Just because you are an elder, a shepherd, and you're in charge of all these people, spiritually speaking, don't be a tyrant. Don't be a disciplinarian, a dictator, all right? And if you think about this, think about the context of this. These people, remember, they're being persecuted. They are suffering. And they need elders that are described here. They need elders like those men, okay? They need elders who are willing to serve, eager to serve, who are not lording it over them because they are suffering. They're in a vulnerable position, and they need this care. And then the motivation there at I guess it's verse 4, sort of motivation, just in case elders need a little motivation to be diligent or faithful. He says, hey, you will receive the crown of glory someday that will never fade away. And what are his instructions then to the elders? How would we sum this up? I would just put it like this. Take care of God's people. That's a simple, straightforward way to summarize these verses. He's talking to elders. Hey, take care of God's people. Take care of God's people. Just as a shepherd takes care of his or her sheep, make sure that they have lots of grass to eat and clean water to drink and all that stuff. And in a similar way, you need to take care of the sheep, the people in your church, okay? Now, if you are an elder, or you think that God is calling you to be an elder, you need to read these verses. You need to just pore over them word by word by word. You need to maybe memorize these verses. These are very significant verses, okay? But remember our underlying theme. Think about this. God is important. God is important in everyday life. He is able to help us. He's willing to help us, but we have to be humble enough to ask him for help. Now, as I was thinking about that underlying theme, I was thinking back, when I used to be an elder, an unpaid elder, and did I always serve willingly? No. Did I always serve eagerly? No, I did not. Did I ever have even a little idea, a feeling like, man, I want to lord it over these people? I have been guilty of that. What is my point? My point is, if an elder truly wants to be like this, you need God's help. Because I don't know what, guys, if you are, the elders here, if you guys can pull this off without God's help, you're a better man than I am. I need God's help to pull this off. God is able to help us. He's able to help elders. He wants to help elders, but we have to be humble enough to ask for that help, okay? So that's how this underlying theme, I think, applies to the elders. But now it's time, he switches topics now, and he's going to talk to the whole congregation, and he's going to talk about this exciting and wonderful topic of humility. We all like that topic, don't we? Anyway, here we go, verses 5 to 7. He says, young men, in the same way, be submissive to those who are older. All of you, clothe yourselves with humility toward one another, because God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxiety on him, because he cares for you. There's some really cool stuff in these verses. But, he begins at verse 5. He's talking to young men. He says, young men, you need to be submissive to the older men. Now, this could be, remember, he's just talked about elders in the previous verse. So it could be that there are some younger men in the congregation, and they're kind of chafing under the elders who are not always, but typically very often are older men. And so perhaps the younger men in the congregation, oh, what do you know? You're old-fashioned, you're fuddy-duddy, come on. You don't know how to do church. And, that's how they did it in the 50s, come on. And Peter says, no, you need to be submissive to the older men. And then comes then he goes on to say, and these are instructions to everybody, okay? I think this is everybody. He says, all of you, so now this is elders, this is young men, this is everybody. It says, clothe yourselves with humility toward one another.